What is up, world? It's your boy Uncle Dossie, aka Haydn Dinsdale. That's my birth name, coming at you live from Melbourne in Australia. In fact, my boudoir, the Love Palace, it is sometimes referred to, most often it is not, but that doesn't matter. Today's video is about learning things from other people. Today's video is 7 mistakes I've learned the hard way, and hopefully you don't have to learn yourself. Lesson number 1, control your temper. Allow me to take you back to 2008 for a second. I was maybe 21, 22 at the time. Maths. How old was I? Doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. I was 21. And I was working at a place, in a factory, and I had a little bit of an explosive temper because I was just a hot-headed young individual with a very long tether, but if you got to the end of it, it was very explosive outcome. And I'd had a few tables fall on me, and I reacted by pushing all these tables, and it backfired, and I had then about half a ton worth of tables fall on me, and they crushed my foot. And actually, let's have a little look here. You might be able to see it. Stay there. Yes, I'm wearing double denim. Oh, balancing is tricky. It's very hard. But I've got a Liz Frank trauma through this section of my foot here. It's called a Liz Frank trauma. And even now, I can't run on sand and things like that because of this accident. Unstable surfaces are no good. And I could blame it purely on the workplace being unsafe or whatever, but I do know that had my anger not been there and I learned to control my temper, that probably wouldn't have happened. So that's lesson 1. Lesson number 2 that I learned the hard way. Don't buy things that you can't afford. It's as simple as that. My example is this. 2013, I bought myself a brand new car. It was a Nissan Dualis. It is a Nissan Dualis. She's still in existence. In fact, she's out the front of my house. Her name is Darla, and she's a gem. All you soccer mums would love her. But at the time when I purchased her, she was already out of my price range, and I wasn't really earning very much money. What happened though after I bought her was I ended a relationship. I moved out of my really cheap house to live in into somewhere that was nearly twice as expensive, and my hours at work decreased, and then I lost my job. So all of a sudden, I've got this car that I'm paying off, and I've got no money coming in, and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do here? So I had to swallow my pride, and I had to actually ask my aunt to help me pay it off, which she willingly did because she's an amazing, amazing human. But at the cost of my pride and my independence, and I just felt like a loser. So to avoid being in that situation, I strongly recommend make sure you've got the cash to purchase things, and you will be fine. Lesson number 3, don't do datura. Ever. If you haven't heard of it, it is a drug. It is a plant that you boil up and drink. Let me take you back to 15-year-old me. Where was I? I'm in Rosebud. That's where I come from. And a friend of mine says, hey Hayden, do you want to get high? And I'm like, yeah, I want to get high. We get high on this stuff called datura, and my God, what a learning experience that was. It was a nightmare. I was hospitalized. I was nearly blind for like a week. I couldn't read, I couldn't see properly. It was very frightening for me. And on top of that, I was still seeing things for days after. I honestly think that it like affected me a little bit. And it's, look, I'm going to put it this way. I'm not anti-drugs. I think there are definitely benefits to certain psychedelics and that. But datura is not something to mess around with, and especially at a young age. So I think the lesson really here is not so much just about the datura, it's about doing your research on things before you engage in something, because that was a frightening time. Lesson number 4, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And this couldn't have been more true for me about 2 years ago. I applied to be a motivational speaker for an organization that already exists. And the prerequisite was this. I was worded up on the phone, and he said, look, when you come in, deliver a 5-minute speech on doing what you love and loving what you do. And cocky me thinks, yep, sweet, I'm gonna kill this. I'll just rock up and start speaking, and it's gonna be fucking awesome. How wrong I was. I got there, and I was standing in front of 3 people, the boss and then 2 of his workers. in this small cubicle, and they just sat there quietly, just looking at me, and he's like, okay, you can start now. And I went, great. And I remember I had like my first couple of lines pre-scripted. I got through those just fine. And then it hit me, the blank. There was just nothing. I was standing there like a stunned mullet, looking at these three people who were clearly unimpressed. And I just remember just all of a sudden the sweat and the freaking, like, I was just hot. I was hot with nerves, and it was just gross. It was so gross. And I got to the end of that 5 minutes. I actually don't even think I made the 5 minutes. It was probably like 3. And at the end, his feedback was just that I need a lot of work. So I left with my tail between my legs and decided that from that point forward I would start preparing, because failing hurts and it sucks. Lesson number 5 would be this: speak up if you need to be heard. I lost a very, very good friend of mine around the age of 21, 22, and I took it really hard, really, really hard. And I remember at that time, most people probably don't even know this, but I was drinking a lot, which is partly why I don't drink anymore. When I drank for like nearly every night for 2 months after it. And it was tough. It was such a tough pill to swallow, knowing that he was gone. And I wasn't really telling anyone. I wasn't really speaking up about it. So what I'd say was the turning point was when I gave up drinking. Well, I at least really cut it back at the time. I've given it up since, but I cut it back at the time, and I just started being honest about how I was feeling with it, rather than just thinking that because I was talking to people that didn't know him personally, they wouldn't be able to relate. But the thing is, everyone can relate. Everyone's dealt with loss. Everyone's had their own misfortune occur in their lives. So what I'd say is, don't be afraid to speak up. If you need to talk, don't bottle it in, because it only eats away you, and it only makes things compound, and it's so tough. So don't do that. Do the opposite. Speak up. Lesson number 6 would be this: if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. This is called trusting your own intuition, trusting your gut. And if I'd done this more in the past, I probably would have been punched in the head less. I have had a few occasions where I've trusted people that seem a little bit skullduggerous, perhaps, that seem like troublemakers. And I've given them the benefit of the doubt when they've come into my space, and tried to ignore them and just let them be. But usually when this has happened, I've ended up getting punched in the head by a stranger. I think once is more than enough, but it's happened a couple of times, and I know this could have been avoided because my gut was telling me not to trust their actions, not to trust these people. This applies in so many areas too. So if you are someone who is in a relationship and it just doesn't feel right, get out of it. If you're someone who is looking at going into a partnership for a business and it doesn't feel right, but it kind of makes sense on paper, don't do it. Trust your intuition. Since adopting this philosophy, it has steered me right on so many occasions, and I think now I'm in a place where I'm just attracting so much goodness because I am making calls based on my intuition. So again, remember, if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And for comedic value, lesson number 7 of today that I learned the hard way is choose the surfaces wisely that you are going to power slide on. This means when you are going to run and slide on your knees like John Travolta in Grease. Let me take you back to 2004. I was in year 12, and I remember doing a performance at school. This is an evening thing, and I was singing AC/DC.
No murder, and the judge's gavel fell. Jury found him guilty, gave him 16 years in hell.
And I remember beforehand, I may have had a couple of bevos to loosen the nerves, so I was a little shit-faced, to be honest. I got to the show, and all the parents and the people in the crowd are watching, a couple of hundred people, and there I am, Uncle Dossie, little rat dog, drunk as a skunk, singing AC/DC, and I remember just like running full pelt from one side of the stage to to the other. I wanted to just do this epic knee slide on the ground, and the material of my pants and the surface of the floor just weren't compatible for that. And I basically just sort of went on my knees and just sort of stopped and then kind of flipped over on my face and power slide. I looked pretty foolish, but you know, you learn. You live and you learn. I'm Haydn Dinsdale, this is my channel. If you've enjoyed the video, I encourage you to like, subscribe and share, and I'll be seeing you in that next video. Peace. AC/DC, AC/DC, AC/DC.
Living easy, living free. Season ticket on a one-way ride. It's getting